everyone. Welcome to For the Love of Nature, a podcast where we tell you everything you need to know about nature and probably more than you wanted to know. I'm Katie, and Laura will be here as soon as her baby stops complaining. But I am joined by Vikram. He is off of, if you guys have listened to Panthropology, and if you haven't, please do. But we're going to have Vikram here, and we're going to talk all about plants. Hey, Vikram.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. No, we've been talking, we've been online podcast friends for quite a while now. So it's great to finally have you on.
Yeah, it's great to be here. It's funny because I feel like nature podcast Twitter is real strong.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of people on there. And then I feel like eventually I get to talk to almost everyone that I'm friends with on there. It's just how do we work that out as far as making it make sense?
Right. No, it is. And it's so many interesting people. And just, somehow Laura and I say this all the time, but somehow we always find each other. I don't know what it is about science people. We find each other somehow, no matter what it is.
Yeah, through friends of friends, or just, we kind of I think the same types of content.
Yep.
And the algorithm keys in on that.
Just forces us to like each other.
Yeah, maybe sometimes, and it's more than you want it to. It's I've seen too many posts about prairie dogs today, and the algorithm's you looked at one too many of these, and this is all you get to see for the rest of your life. Yeah, right.
Just prairie dog. Just prairie dogs.
That's it. All prairie dogs all the time.
I wouldn't complain. So Vikram and I, we're both in Texas, actually, not too far apart. About 4 hours, you'd say? I'm in Fort Worth.
Something
about
that.
4 hours.
Yeah.
So do you want to just give a little bit of your background on who you are and what do you do? Because you actually, it's diverse. You do a little bit of everything and anything.
Yeah, so I'm up here in Lubbock in the southern panhandle of Texas. So not too far from you, but much drier and windier and
right.
All the things. But I work at Texas Tech University. I am a lecturer right now, about to be, I don't know when this is coming out, about to be an assistant professor of practice of horticulture.
Hello, congrats.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, that's been, I don't know that it means anything other than my business card gets bigger. But,
right.
It sounds good.
That's awesome.
And then I run our greenhouse and horticultural gardens on campus at Texas Tech. So I teach intro horticulture. I play in the dirt. I work with student workers and the public. And I podcast. And for better or worse, have a TikTok.
For better or for worse, if you guys don't follow, what's your TikTok handle?
The Plant Prof.
Yeah, dude, it is a good channel. It really is. You really do get some really good traction over there, for sure.
Oh, well, it's fun, and it was one of those things that in 2020, when all of my student work, we left for spring break in March and then just never came back.
Yeah.
And all my student assistants had to go home. We weren't allowed to have students on campus till June or July of that year.
Wow.
So 4 months, it was just me putting googly eyes.
Just me and plants.
Watering plants. And I think I started TikTok as a way to give myself an outlet while I was there for hours and hours watering and going crazy.
Yeah.
But it's been fun.
Yeah. So make sure you guys go follow them because you really do post consistently and a lot on TikTok.
I am on there quite a bit, and and it's funny because I don't really plan much out. It's just whatever happens to be relevant that day or pops into my head, and a lot of it's just throwaway content. But every now and then, there's some interesting stuff.
He's lying. He's selling himself short. It's good. It really is all good. So make sure you guys go check him out too. So let's go ahead and we have some questions for you. And then, as always, we're just going to keep it as a casual conversation. And whenever Laura's baby decides it would like to sleep, she'll be running in here. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and we'll start at the very beginning. Plants. Has this always been a lifelong obsession, or is this just something you woke up one day and you're like, this is it, plants. Plants is now my life.
I've actually always liked plants to some degree or another, So my mom and I lived with my grandparents when I was little. And my granddad was an avid gardener. And so some of my earliest memories are messing around in the backyard, gardening and, planting trees and just doing whatever. And so I've always been into plants and gardening and all of that. And when I started college, I started in engineering. I went to Texas. Yeah, I know. I went to Texas A&M and I was going to go to do engineering and then go to med school. and all of this stuff. And then I realized after my first year of college and an internship that I don't like blood and I'm bad at calculus.
You're like,
And
maybe engineering and medical is not for me.
those were going to be problems. And so I was talking to an advisor, and they were like, what do you like to do?
Mhm.
And I was like, well, I've always liked plants. And so my undergrad was in horticulture. Actually, all my degrees are in horticulture, but I have a Bachelor of Arts in horticulture. Actually, I studied landscape design.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then my master's was in tree crop production. I studied olives in South Texas. And then my PhD was in urban water conservation.
Oh,
But it's
nice.
all horticulture, all plants, all the time for, a lot of years.
For everything. That's awesome. So you talked a little bit about how you're a professor out of Texas Tech, which you guys won't be able to see, but I feel like I'm sinning right now. I know.
It's okay.
I have a Texas Longhorns koozie. I'm not even from here, but I have enough poor influence around me that I just acquired this. But my son
You
forces
can't help it.
I know. My son forces it on me because we moved here when he was 2.5. And so as he says, he's like, I'm a Texan. He actually got really mad at his dad a few weeks ago because his dad was joking and told him that he was born in Arkansas, like at the military base. And so he's like, technically, you're an Arkansan. And my son was so upset because he's like, I'm a Texan. Like, he was so
Good for him.
So upset. So most of this stuff. But yeah, I took a drink and I was like, oh no.
I don't care as much as I probably did. So, I went to my undergrad's from A&M. My other degrees are from Texas Tech. And so I used to care a lot, and I just don't anymore.
For those of you that aren't in Texas, again, I'm not from here. It is like a bloodbath sometimes when it comes to Texas universities and who's better and fandom. It is insane.
Oh, the rivalries are real, like
Really
real
real.
life.
Yeah.
And we get, it's funny because like if you're talking to a Texan from anywhere that is not Texas, like we are very much like go team, like everything, like we're the best state, best country in the world, whatever. But then inside Texas, like we fight even more about like who's the real Texans.
Yeah, right.
And, it's one of those things.
It is. It really is. So what classes are you teaching right now?
So right now I just teach intro horticulture.
Okay.
And oversee the program. We have this semester, so it's me and 2 other instructors, and then we have 5. Oh, I'm forgetting someone. Yeah, 5 TAs. So we teach about 400 to 500 students a semester in this course.
Wow.
And 15 or anywhere between 12 and 16 labs. And
wow.
So I teach one of the lectures and I oversee the program like as a whole. And I'm working on developing a couple classes. There may be a few that I pick up over the next couple years, but we're not completely sure what that's going to look like yet.
Yeah. What's your favorite class that you've ever taught?
Actually, and it sounds weird because a lot of people that teach don't like teaching intro classes, but I love it. Like, I genuinely love it. And so it's a core science here at Texas Tech. So we get like 90% non-majors, right? They're just trying to fill a life science requirement. And primarily freshmen. And so, like, I'm getting a lot of these kids.
That's when you hook them.
Oh, yeah. No, 100%.
Come to the plant side. Like,
well, that and, like, I don't know. I teach big classes. Like, I have 125-ish students this semester in my lecture. But I feel like, teaching freshmen and teaching people that don't know. I mean, let's be honest. Most freshmen coming into college have no idea what they want to do. They have no idea what they're doing. Like, it's the first time away from home for a lot of them. A lot of these kids come from small town Texas or small town USA that, like, Lubbock's not a huge city, but it's probably the biggest place a lot of them have been.
Yeah, especially around that area.
Yeah, and, like, I think it's a cool, unique opportunity to, try to hook them into plants and be like, hey, horticulture's like a real major. You can do things in this. But also, like, I like the opportunity to try to make sure they don't just get like lost in these huge freshman classes. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to learn everyone's name, but we have, fairly small labs, and something we kind of impress on our TAs is like, build these relationships where you can. Like, we want to make sure that they're getting a good experience as they're coming to the university, because it kind of can set the tone for like the rest of their academic career. And like, I feel like that's
really
important.
Could. No, that is great. Man, I need to come out and take some of your classes. So how would you approach, or how do you approach teaching students nowadays about plants? Because like you kind of hit on a little bit, because it really is something that is all around us, but so many people just overlook it, don't appreciate it, don't slow down. So kind of what's your approach? Like you said that you like teaching freshmen sort of because of that aspect, but do you kind of push on that a little bit harder?
Yeah, I think I do a little bit. And, as a core science class, I don't know how to say it the right way. Like, it's about plants, but for more than that, for me, it's about like science literacy in general. Like how does the process work? What does the scientific process look like? Like, we're assaulted with information constantly today.
Absolutely.
And some of it's bad, a lot of it is bad, and some of it's real good. And so some of it for us is we try to make sure that they have at least a basic understanding of how the scientific process works. And so when they get a piece of information, like how can they critically evaluate it? And in the context of plants, that kind of lets us take it from sort of a holistic view of like, well, I actually go the other way. So I start real specific, and we start like at the cellular level and build up. And then the last unit that we're about to start is on like ecosystems and sustainability and industry. And a lot of intro classes flip that and
They do, yeah.
Like all the big level, high level stuff early on. But like I like to address it of what is the question we're answering, right? Is like, how do plants work? How do they interact with the environment? And some of the basic cellular stuff lets me build on that and tell the story from like a real narrow focus to the big picture in the long run.
Yeah.
And I feel like once we've learned about, okay, how does a plant work in general? How does it interact with the soil and water and sunlight and everything else? How do external like factors influence stuff like photosynthesis?
Yeah.
I think it gives a better appreciation when we start talking about, okay, now this plant does not exist on its own. It's in this ecosystem with other plants and animals and all this stuff. And I think, at least for me, the way I learn, that contextualizes it a little bit better.
Yeah, I think it did, because I remember like thinking back now that you point that out. So let me think here. I took a botany class. My first botany class, I lucked out. I actually took it overseas whenever I was in Australia.
Wow.
And so it was one of those things like I got X number of credits for going overseas, and then I got to kind of pick which ones I wanted it to cover. And because I didn't exactly get along with the professor that taught a lot of the botany classes, I was like, that one. But yeah, so the first one I took was over there, and I did a lot of studies with epiphytes and tree canopies and things. And so that was a lot of fun. And so, but that was just like, hey, just very general. And so then whenever I got back, I started taking botany, like I had to take another botany class. And we did do it big picture down. And I do remember sitting there thinking, okay, well, how, like, and I have an interest in science. And I remember even then being like, okay, how does this fit into but wait a minute, how does that go to that? Like, how does this go to that? So I think flipping it, like you said, that makes a lot more sense.
And I think that, my idea is that, okay, so like of my 125 students, or of our 400 whatever students, most of them are going to go and finish their business degree or English degree or whatever it is they're doing. And they may never like have a career in plants, and most of them won't.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
But if they can go in their backyard someday and like be able to keep their fruit tree alive, or have a better appreciation for like where the food in the grocery store comes from, or any little piece of like, I feel like we're building this big puzzle for people of like eco-consciousness and like consciousness about the world around us. And even if all I do is give them one of those pieces, I feel like I'm doing my job.
Absolutely. Vikram, you're just changing lives out there. Just doing a good job. No, that's awesome. So what is your favorite plant and or group of plants?
So I was thinking about this question, and
because you knew it was coming.
I did. And I was trying to figure out how to answer this well because there's so many and it's hard for me to choose. But I think my favorite
Is
plant...
it because the classifications are so horrible when it comes to plants?
That is very much part of it.
Laura and I bicker about this all the time. We're like, it's just so different. We're like, stop. Why can't plant people just make this a little bit easier?
Oh, it's terrible. It's terrible. And like they keep changing stuff like all the time. Like we used to we teach plant ID and stuff, and several have been reclassified in the past. Yeah, it's fun. I think one of my favorite plants, I'll throw one out there, is a little plant called a Blackfoot daisy. Melampodium leucanthum. I don't remember exactly. And it's just this little, I don't know, this little mound of daisy with like bright white flowers.
Yeah.
But so during my master's, one of the professors I studied under, one of my advisors, did a lot of wildflower research. Like that was a major part of her work. And so my colleagues and I, my cohorts and I would go out.
Remind me again, did you get your graduate degree in Texas?
Yes. So actually both my master's and PhD are from Texas Tech.
Okay.
So
I couldn't remember. Yeah, because I was like, because I was also going to say that's not surprising because wildflowers, people in Texas go crazy for their wildflowers. It is a thing. I mean, and it's gorgeous. Like when I first moved out here, everybody was like, oh, hey, it's going to be like, wait till spring. Just wait till spring. It's gorgeous. And then I was like, it took me by surprise how gorgeous Texas is.
It's pretty amazing. And we have such vastly diverse ecosystems that no matter where you go, you see something different. And it's always really interesting.
Yeah.
But we would go out and we would just like drive on the side of the highway and like in our crappy old Texas Tech van. And like we'd see like a patch of wildflowers and we had like permits and stuff to collect seed for improving the genetics and studying the genetics, things like that. And one of my fellow grad students and I had climbed up on this like, I don't know, little rock outcropping on the side of the highway. And there was a Blackfoot. It hadn't rained like at all that year. It was dry. It was probably 100 degrees. And there was this little Blackfoot daisy growing in probably an inch of soil between two rocks. And it looked just like the pictures you probably just looked up. Like perfect.
Yeah.
It was perfectly happy. And I'm like, if this thing can survive out here in the middle of nowhere, baking in the sun, like it deserves my respect.
Yeah. Fair. That's fair.
But it's a great landscape plant. It's great for a lot of things. And so that's one of my favorites for sure.
That's awesome. Can you tell us about a current project or research focus that you're particularly passionate about?
So most of my work today goes into community and multipurpose landscaping, or community and multipurpose horticulture, I should say. So we do a lot of work right now in the greenhouse on different production systems. So hydroponics, aeroponics, soilless production, growing with different types of lights and fertilizers, but like sort of controlled environment greenhouse growing. And then part of my job is in a kind of a weird situation. We had a piece of land in the middle of a neighborhood donated to our department. And it is the site of a community garden that has been, cool. It's like a double city lot right in the middle of the neighborhood where a lot of tech students live. And so because I'm the greenhouse and garden guy, that became my project.
Yeah, right. Let's pass it to this guy.
Sure. But, we're looking a lot at like, how does that improve quality of life and neighborhoods and food security and all that? So also, how do we do like multi-purpose landscapes? If you're, going to landscape, how can you use edible plants or pollinator plants or plants that have more than just an aesthetic value to like fill up your landscape so that, it looks great. It improves your property value, does all the things, but hey, I've got tomatoes I can give to my neighbors or eat myself or take to a farmer's market or whatever. So that's kind of, for me, a big area of focus is like community level, multi-purpose, like horticulture and agriculture.
Yeah. Do you like aquaponics, hydroponics?
I do.
That's always something that's like fascinating because I don't think people understand the yield that those can give off.
Oh, it's crazy. Like, I mean, we're talking about, so lettuce is, for example, one of the major crops grown hydroponically. And I think for the same amount of water and the same amount of space, you get like 10 times the yield in just a standard, like floating hydroponic system.
Which is nuts.
It's nuts. And we have found that through aeroponics, which is similar, except like instead of it just sitting in water, the roots are suspended like in the air. And then like nutrients and water are sprayed onto the roots. And so
Oh, well, let's back up 1 second. Can you
Sure.
give everybody a brief overview of hydroponics versus aquaponics? 'Cause I'm like, I know what this is, but can you just explain real quick what those are so that the guests know?
Yeah, absolutely. So hydroponics is like soilless growing. It's like using just water and nutrients or whatever to grow plants. So think about if you had a 5-gallon bucket and plants like set in the lid of the bucket and the roots grow down into the solution. That's hydroponics. Like that's super simple. If you've got a jar that you took a cutting from something and stuck it in and it's growing roots, you're growing hydroponics. Like it's just growing in water. Aquaponics is sort of the same thing, except you add like fish or shrimp or some other kind of animal to the system. So essentially, the fish, as they poop and do what fish do, add fertilizer to the water, and then the plants clean the water, take up the nutrients, and then scrub the water for the fish. And then aeroponics is very similar to hydroponics again, except that the roots are suspended in the air, and we spray nutrient solution on the roots.
So have you found a difference as far as the yield goes between like the three? Is there a difference, or would you just say it's up to the person how they take care of it and things like that?
So that's a big part of it for sure. And research is ongoing. I would say like hydroponics was kind of where it started, and it's not new technology. We have evidence of the Aztecs doing hydroponics as early as 1100 CE, and like 1,000 years ago, almost like doing like building big rafts and sticking plants in them and pushing them out in the lake, like which is incredible. So aquaponics with fish is probably about the same on the plant side, but a lot of people are growing like shrimp or crawfish or tilapia or catfish. So you get sort of a meat crop out of it as well, or a meat product as well. From just like I have a grad student that is just graduating this semester, and his project was on aeroponics, and he went to Home Depot, bought buckets, designed the whole system by himself. He built the whole thing himself, including like coating the spray pumps and the circuit boards and everything else. He did the whole thing.
Wow. And
we saw about double the yield in aeroponics versus hydroponics with the same amount of water use. And so interesting. So we're finding that like there's all these interesting ways to grow plants that are super efficient. And like, I don't think that conventional agriculture is going anywhere. Like we're still going to keep doing the thing, but we can supplement food supplies, especially in places where like growable, like farmland is at a premium.
Yeah, and especially like so then whenever you're talking to folks and you're giving like the urban water cycle, or you're talking about like the community gardens and things like that, is hydroponics, aquaponics, is that something that you particularly push just because one, I mean, it saves water, saves space, and it does have such a high yield?
Yeah, it's something that we're starting to get into, and we're looking at, we're trying to get some grant funding to get something called a freight farm, which is essentially a shipping container.
Oh, yeah. I've seen those.
Yeah, and like they can produce something like 4,000 heads of lettuce in a season.
Whoa.
Yeah. Laura's here, by the way, guys.
Hi, Laura.
Sorry, I had to tune in on that one. That was
just as Laura's not eating it. What is it? A cupcake? A brownie. Just
it looked good.
It was really good. It was on the discount rack. That's the only place I get my desserts anymore.
Sometimes those are the best ones, actually.
Yeah, right.
Or I mean, and we talked about on the podcast before how much water lettuce uses in particular. Mm-hmm. So that's amazing.
Well, it does. And in this system, it's all a closed system. It's like LED lights, and all it needs is a power supply and like a hose hookup. And they can like take these and drop them pretty much anywhere. And like they cost a couple $100,000, but if you think about it, like it can create jobs in urban communities. Again, it's a huge food supply. And like we're looking at the feasibility of like how could we do research of in like public green spaces, maybe in like a public park or a pocket park in a major city, like dropping one of those units in there and producing food like for the neighborhood and employing people who live in that neighborhood to run it.
Yeah.
Like that is like in my mind, like prime community agriculture and the way that we can improve communities and neighborhoods and people's health and everything else along with it.
So is it kind of like other renewable things where it's like super heavy upfront cost, but then really like the long-term maintenance isn't that much?
Yeah, in general, like like I said, it may be a couple $100,000 up front, but all the lights are LEDs, so they're fairly efficient. It's a recirculating system, and whereas you may look at 40% efficiency in a field setting growing lettuce, this is like 95% efficient.
Whoa.
Yeah. Dang.
And all you really have to buy, I mean, yeah, there's some repair and upkeep, but usually these companies, it's not just freight farms, there's several. They have like service contracts built into the price, and pretty much you have to buy seed. And that's kind of it.
Yeah, that's amazing, because I know even here in Fort Worth, we have not a pretty big, but a big enough food desert section of our city where there's just nothing. And for you guys that have never heard the term food desert before, it's just like in the middle of a city where there's no, at least grocery stores. I don't know exactly how they define it, but it's no grocery stores in an area. Basically, they have to go out of their way, like significantly out of their way to go to a grocery store. It's not like something they can walk to. It's not something they can easily take a bus to or a bus route to.
Why? Just because of
Well, it's because, I know here in Fort Worth, just because I can speak to that, I mean, it's just how the houses were all built up, and it's just houses and houses and houses, and there was just no developer that came in and said, oh, we should put something here. And so then it's either now, it's to the point where you're going to destroy, houses, how are we going to get stuff? So they've been thinking about, alternative and interesting ways to kind of figure out and how to fix this problem, because it is bad. I mean, I believe they changed up some of the bus routes and things like that to kind of go through there a little bit quicker and things. But I mean, that's a problem. I mean, it's not just here. It's in pretty much every major city. You can find at least a pocket or two of where this happens.
Yeah. And it's generally defined as you don't have a source of fresh produce or grocery store is what they actually define it as within what they consider walking distance, which is usually a mile in an urban setting or 10 miles in a rural setting. So if you think about it, some of the I know, and imagine even walking a mile with groceries.
Oh, you're great. 10? In one trip though, because I am a one trip grocery shop
me
bagger,
too.
so that would be
until I threw out my back, and then never mind. I'm on the 3rd floor, so 6 trips later, I'm dead.
Oh yeah, no
thanks. Yeah. Well, that is a big problem, though. I mean, and it's something that these hydroponics, especially these shipping container ones, that I mean, that would be amazing if something like this could solve that issue.
Well, and the cool thing too is it doesn't even have to be that. They're doing there's research going on. Is okay, you've got an abandoned Walmart or an abandoned apartment building or whatever else. How do we turn that into a hydroponic growing facility, right? How do we
That would be heaven for me. I would just live there. You would just...
Well, can you imagine how good it would smell in there? The earth smell.
But also all these kids, local, neighbors. I'd be that myth that all the neighborhood kids are there's this crazy lady that lives in the hydroponics building. Because I'd just be in there. This is amazing, guys. Because it is a really, really neat. And I love hydroponic system and the aquaponic system. It's fascinating to me.
It is very cool. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that was a very long answer to your question. But no, I think community horticulture and controlled environment, more again, agriculture is not going anywhere. We have a lot of people to feed, and we have to use a lot of land to do that. But we can, especially in urban centers, especially in places that's maybe in the middle of the desert where you have to ship food in hundreds of miles. We can address some of those issues just by being a little bit creative and by using the technology available to us.
Yeah. This is kind of a random question. Can you stack those shipping containers?
I don't see why you couldn't. I don't know that the one problem is you do have a lot of water running through it, so they tend to be very heavy. There's a lot of infrastructure in them. But that's a solvable problem, right?
Yes.
Those are things,
framework stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and so I think ultimately you could have a stack of them. You could have, and they're not that big. You could line fence lines with them. There's a lot of cool stuff you could do.
You could just really utilize space really, really well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I know this is sort of a broad question, but can you speak to the role of plants in our ecosystem and why they're important to study and conserve?
Yeah, so plants, I like to tell people that plants are at the bottom and top of our food chain. And people laugh at me
Makes
when I
sense.
say that, but like plants feed all the things, right? Whether you're like a vegetarian, you just eat plants, or you're a carnivore and you just eat meat, like your food eats plants.
Right.
You
Where the
know?
energy's coming from.
Right. And plants have these amazing sort of engines that turn sunlight into everything else that we use, right? Like they harvest sunlight, they turn it into sugar, something else eats that, and then like that thing maybe gets eaten. And but ultimately, like if we think about it, all matter on the planet at some point like is driven by the energy from the sun, and plants are the mechanism that convert that into a usable form, like a chemical usable form. And so, and then eventually, like as animals die, as plants die, as things return back to the ecosystem and decompose, plants take those component parts and recycle them back into the system. And so plants and fungi, I have to, there's always one fungus person out there that's
they're
like,
working together.
yeah, there's always some like mycologist that's like, well, actually, and they,
Don't want to tick off any mycologists today.
no, I've seen The Last of Us. I know it. Like, um, but yeah, so they are the sort of great producers on this planet where they take various forms of energy, mostly solar energy, and turn it into stuff that we can use. And it's just incredible. Like from hamburgers to houses, like we can't do that without plants.
I love to talk about that, especially with the younger kids. So I have a trees program at the nature center, and one of the big things that I like to hit on is how similar trees in particular, but how our systems are very similar. Like you eat, they eat. They just eat something different. They're eating sunshine, and like how our bodies are very similar and process things similar, structure similar. We just look different. We do things a little bit differently.
Yeah, and it's funny because we're all chasing, energy in some form, whether it's nitrogen or carbon or some, combination of the two. Like those things make the world go around.
Right. So we kind of already hit on this a little bit, but what do you see as the future of botany and plant sciences, and where do you think the field is headed?
So I think our big challenge, well, we have a few, as a planet, species, whatever.
Yeah.
I think addressing things like how do we sequester more carbon? How do we make plants that are more efficient with the way they grow? So they trap more things from our atmosphere. But then the big thing is like one of our great big challenges I think we face is that there's so many of us, and overpopulation is kind of a myth. Like we have our planet has the carrying capacity, the space for plenty of people. And they're saying 10 billion by 2050, right? That's kind of the number that gets thrown around. And we can feed all those people. We just have to figure out how to be more efficient at it, at the things we grow, how to be more equitable in the ways that we get food to people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And how to not wreck all of our natural systems in the process, right?
Yeah.
So I think by doing better jobs of plant breeding and researching things like hydroponics and aeroponics and all this stuff, like we start to again fill in like pieces of that puzzle. But that's where I think we're headed. I think we're figuring out how to make food more nutrient dense, how to clean the air better, and how to produce food more efficiently.
That's awesome.
That's really cool. Because I think I think the big struggle for a lot of even just nature lovers, like a lot of people that I've worked with in the past would say that they like nature, but they're not necessarily into plants. But I think it's because they're not seeing plants as the essential piece in everything. That in order to know about animals, you have to know about plants because of what they eat or where they live or anything like that. And so thinking about botany as how to make the system more efficient, I think a lot of people have never thought about. They're thinking about botanists as just the people going out there looking at flowers. Not necessarily. For real. I mean, I definitely think.
Just Vikram skipping through the plains of West Texas, just out there in the wildflowers.
But I definitely, like, there is the side of, like, that just like any other kind of science and any other kind of scientist who works with a system, making it a more efficient, better working system, especially in the constraints that we have to work within.
And that's a really a good way to put it too, because like if you look at a natural system, like everything sort of balances itself out. They tend to be as efficient as they need to be, no more, no less. They kind of find their balance. But, we don't have truly natural ecosystems anymore.
Right,
like there's
exactly.
nothing we haven't touched.
We're right. We keep tweaking things a little bit here and there, and then something else has to make sure that tweaks back the other direction.
Right. And so like our job, I think now with scientists in this field is just to one, let's not break it more.
Amen.
Let's start there.
But in the process, like how do we take these systems and how do we take what we know and what we've learned and apply those tools to making things better where we can?
Yeah.
Alrighty. So before Laura got on here, we did talk a little bit about, your social media and everything, but how do you think that just either in the botany field or just us as scientists, how do you think we can better engage the public with botany and plant sciences and why the importance of it? Because first of all, we did talk about your TikTok, but we have not talked about, you have a freaking book coming out in July, which looks amazing.
Well, thanks. I'm super excited about it.
I am too. As an adult, I'm excited about it. Like, it's not geared towards me, but I'm pumped. It's so colorful and bright, and I'm excited.
I'm always excited when any scientist makes their stuff approachable for especially younger audiences.
Yeah, so this book's called Plants to the Rescue, and it's about kind of what we've been talking about, actually, like how do we use science and use the things plants are already doing to address things like pollution and climate change and hunger and all that stuff. The illustrator, Brian Lambert, is absolutely incredible. Like,
yeah, it looks
absolutely
amazing.
incredible.
Yeah.
But yeah, it comes out in July and it's kind of geared at like 7 to 10, 12-year-olds, something
or
in there.
Or Katie, it's fine.
Well,
yeah.
And it's funny because I was reading through it and I was like, I'm enjoying this, which I guess is a good thing. But I like,
it's your own book, and you're like, wait a minute, this is fun for me.
Yeah, no, it was, and it's funny because like it was a process that took like a year, and so like going back and reading some of the stuff I'd written at the beginning of the process was kind of fun because I was like, I've done a lot since then, and I was like, oh, I did write that. That's interesting. But just in general, like, I think one of the big problems we have in science is that we don't close the feedback loop. And what I mean by that is, like, as publicly funded scientists, people are paying us to do the research, right? Like, we are literally paid by the taxpayers to do science. Like, that's whether people in academia want to admit that or not, it's the truth.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we take this data we generate and we write it in jargon that people don't understand, and we put it in journals that are paywalled, and we're never giving the people who paid for the product the thing that they paid for.
Yeah, it's really just for peers. It's all for our peers.
Right.
Which already
100%.
half of us know what you're, like, talking about now.
Yeah, and it may be like, oh, one little nugget, but how much more could we do if we took that and, like, put it out so everyone can understand it? And, like, extension services do that. Like, it's being done. But, like, by and large, like, we don't get training in academia for that. We don't get incentivized in academia for that. You know, it's like, oh, great, but how many, like, publications do you have, right?
Right.
You know, you could have 5 million downloads on a podcast, and then, like, oh, that's nice. And but like, how many peer-reviewed journals do you have? I don't have 5 million downloads, by the way. That's not. That's a pipe dream. But like, I think that anything we can do, from TikTok to Twitter to Instagram or anything else, just to let people see the science that we're doing, even if it's in little glimpses, like, I think that's meaningful. I think, like, de-jargoning, like, the science we do is super important.
Absolutely.
And also, like, and I say this to my colleagues all the time. I had to give a talk one time on, like, how do you approach, like, social media communication or just, like, science. Like, my number one rule, or my top 2 rules are: be a real human being and don't be a jerk. Like that's it.
It can be pretty easy. Yeah.
Like, just be nice to people. Like don't be arrogant when you answer something. It's not a crime to not know stuff. You know, it's not a crime to be wrong about stuff. And so, like, communicate in the way that people need, like, can understand it and like have a personality and be a real human being too.
Yeah. And it's just enjoying it, because so many of us, in the science field, we're definitely not in it for the money. And
No.
so we are passionate, but then I think somewhere along the way, so many people, because of the low pay, just because of life stress, you kind of lose that passion that you once had, just because you get tired
Or
of it.
like
And so
Vikram was saying, like not everyone is ever trained to talk to people either. Like if you're a
Yeah.
hard sciences
Yeah.
person, most of you didn't have to take many speech classes or like interpersonal communication or anything like that.
yeah, anything like that. Yeah.
Education classes. I think we're seeing with more social media and things like that, it's not like these channels that are science based are failing. Like people are interested in the content because it's approachable. So I think that if science would continue to push in the direction of being approachable, crossing the bridge to get to people without the jargon, making it clear and straightforward and trying to meet people where they're at, people are interested in it. It's not a lack of interest. It's just a lack of being able to get there.
Well, and I think too, like, not everyone is comfortable like me putting my big dumb face on the internet all the time, right? Like, and you don't have to be, right? I don't think people should have to do that. But I think if you get a call from someone at a podcast or so one of my main rules, and I've done traditional media too. I've done radio and TV and like a little bit of everything. My rule is when I get called by a reporter, I figure out how to help them, like as much as I can. Because I know that if they're like writing about science, they're going to talk to somebody.
Yep.
Yeah.
That could be me.
Yeah.
That could be some like who maybe knows something about the field they're interested in, or it could be someone who maybe doesn't. And I want to make sure that even if I'm not the one out there like telling the story, that I am informing those stories as well as I can.
Yeah, and
that's
you can
an
be a
interesting
piece of it.
perspective.
Like even if you don't know it all, they're at least, okay, well, Vikram said this, and this other person's saying something totally different. Maybe I actually have to look more into this.
I go with Vikram.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. Well, that's a scary thought, but no, I just think that even if you're not the one out there making the content, be willing to supply some of the information that the people who are doing it need, right?
Yeah,
Like,
I think that's very true, because not everyone needs or can do everything. But if you can be supportive of somebody who's doing the other thing, like even if, within your university, like you don't have to be that person doing the social media stuff, but give them the information so that someone else can.
Right. And I and it's not an easy problem to solve, but I think that we've made, I think in the last 10 years, huge steps in the right direction. Bill Nye walked 30 years ago so that we can run today,
Yeah.
doing some of that public science communication stuff. And it's a big task. But again, like you said, there's the Hank Greens of the internet who just get on and tell funny dad jokes and talk about science, and
people are there for it.
They're there for it.
There for it.
They are.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much good content out there.
So Vikram, you did mention about like how far we've come, in the last 10 years since Bill Nye and things like that. So where do you think the field of botany is going in the next 10 to 20 years? We talked a little bit about like, from a perspective of, I don't know, more of academia, more of study research and things like that. But just in general, what do you hope to see happen?
I hope to see, again, more people getting interested in plants. And it's funny because like I started college in 2005, graduated in 2010. I did a victory lap. It's fine. I changed majors at least once. It happens.
Yeah.
But like when I got into plants, people were like, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
That's boring, But now plants are aesthetic, and like plant Instagram is like real strong, and plant TikTok and
oh my gosh,
and
yes.
all this stuff. And I think that instead of being scared of it, like the field of botany needs to like really lean into that. Not so much from the, I'm going to sell a Monstera on Etsy for $400. Like that's stupid. But in the being willing to like, hey, here's a picture of me in the lab doing stuff. Right. And I think that botanists or like and horticulturists and plant people, like we're just so thunderously nerdy.
Yeah.
But in maybe
in the best
an
way,
endearing
though.
sort of
Yeah,
way.
but it's like the entomologist and the herpetologist. I mean, really, come on. It's all the niche scientists. All the
It
niche
is.
scientists are really nerdy. A paleontologist. But I think that's what people
for
really
sure.
like.
Because you're into it, and that comes through. Like that passion and that nerdiness, it does come through, and whenever it's genuine like that, people do jump all over. Because I mean, if you're getting excited about something, especially plants are like, okay, this guy's really excited. Maybe I should get excited about X, Y, Z.
I think too, because plants are so different than us, at least in most people's head, that it's all new or it's all really weird and interesting, and people are really into the weird and interesting facts about things.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can just catch people with the weird and interesting, yeah, I think people will be on board.
And I think that's where we need to be. Like, I think that's where we need to be headed, and improving diversity in our field, improving equity in our field. Like, I think we're doing a good job in botany of that, in the plant sciences of that. Just thinking about a conference I'm going to this summer and some of the keynotes and all that. Like, I think we're getting there, but I want us to see it be more accessible. I want to see it be more equitable, and just to see us like publicly having lots of fun being plant nerds. Like that's where I want it to go.
Yeah.
Here in Maryland, man, people are
awesome.
like, the native plant movement is strong. Like, you in this time of year, you can't throw a rock without hitting a native plant sale, which is awesome. People are really into their native plants here. Like some of the counties have just passed like HOA laws used to restrict what you could and couldn't have in your yard, and now one of the counties right around here has said they can't say that anymore. If you want your yard to look like a native field, it can, and the HOA can't do anything about it.
Oh, wow.
Actually, they did that in Texas recently too. Like, the HOAs can't disallow like drought tolerant native plants and stuff like that. You may have to get like a design passed by the HOA board, but like as far as the types of materials, like they can't say, no, you can't use that. It's, like, well, it's a drought tolerant plant. Yeah, I can.
That's pretty
Which
cool.
is cool.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I definitely think that more and more and more and more people, like, it's a slow growing, but yes.
But
I had a colleague that used to say that education is a long and repetitive process. And I think about that a lot when I do this kind of thing. And when I go out and like do a TikTok about Bradford Parish for the 400th time and how we should set them all on fire, right? Because again, you don't know where people are in their educational process. And like that may be the first time they heard it. And so like, I think as communicators and as scientists, we need to like, I don't know a better way to say it other than just like suck it up and do it. Just like give the message again, because if we really believe in what we're saying, we should be willing to deliver that same message over and over and over
without it turning into like an aggressive message.
Right.
Because I have definitely seen that end up happening on some of the nature forums that I belonged on. They're like, somebody brings up the fact that this plant is like a toxic plant, and some people are like, oh, well, let's do some education about, was it Nandina? It's toxic to birds. And other people are like, take that out of your yard right now. Like, it is extreme.
For sure. Oh gosh, that's the truth. Like, just try to talk about having a front lawn on the internet. But like, I think if we approach all of these things with like empathy and compassion, like it makes it easier to be like, okay, people may not know it. And I think kind of like we talked about earlier, like it is not a crime to not know things. Yeah. And that's like my mantra sometimes is like, just approach people with compassion, and it makes this whole thing a lot easier.
Yeah, definitely. So one last big question of our main questions. Laura and I have talked about this multiple times, but over the years, there's been more and more research about plants and how they communicate or take care of each other, all this other kind of stuff. Do you think that within our kids' lifetimes, we'll start to view plants and trees in particular, as being closer to animals than how we see them now?
Oh, gosh.
Because plants do some really awesome but cool things.
Oh, it's incredible. They're these vastly complicated organisms that, people kind of go like, there's this concept known as plant blindness, because they're just always there. They fade into the background, right?
Totally.
But no, their communication systems, whether it's through like fungal networks underground or compounds they release into the air, or there was a paper just released that there's actually ultrasonic sounds they like.
So wild, like elephants.
I missed that.
Yeah, like when plants and it's different. So like if a plant is under drought stress, it produces one kind of sound. If it's being if it's being no, and like if it's being
wild.
predated on by like a caterpillar, it's a different type of sound. And there is some data, I don't know how compelling the data is, but there's some data that other plants can detect those vibrations and start changing
we did
their biology.
We talked about that. It was through sound. Remember, they were talking about the caterpillar sound in particular, that a plant was producing more toxin when they were played that sound in a lab setting.
And things like volatile organic compounds, like they'll like, tomatoes have a very specific smell. Like if you've ever had a tomato plant, like it is the only thing that smells like that. And it's hard to explain. But there are receptors on other tomato plants that can definitely pick that up. So if they're being chewed on, it releases that stuff in the air and the other plants start sort of like gathering their defenses. But also there are predators like parasitic wasps and birds and other insects that can detect those chemicals. So the plants are literally calling in reinforcements from animals as they're being like chewed on. And there's just so much we don't understand about how they interact with them, with each other, with the environment. There's data that shows that like it's kind of a common thing that if you go outside more, you're healthier and happier and all those things. But now there's data that there's plant compounds and plant pheromones that they release that we have receptors for in our brains, that literally being out in nature is good for our health in a physiological sort of way. And so I think, in 20, 30 years, our concept of how and what plants are is definitely going to change as our technology gets better for measuring some of these things. I think like we're just right on the edge and right at the beginning of what we could understand about the natural world around us.
I feel like it'd be the same as if we did end up finding like an alien species, that even though we share the world with plants, they're such an alien organism comparatively to us that we're just like, I don't know what to measure. Or like we haven't until recently, like how we can't think about, well, they don't have a brain. So clearly that they don't think. Okay, but what if it's a different way? Or yeah. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, what if it's something that like we just don't even have like a file in our brain
exactly.
for, right?
Yeah. It'd be like coming across something that wasn't carbon based. Okay, well then where do we even start? Like how does it work? Think about this? Yeah.
We don't know. Yeah. We don't and I think it's important to understand too in science that we don't know what we don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that we should be constantly thinking about that as we approach the scientific process, that we have to evaluate and reevaluate our conclusions, and we have to test the things that we thought didn't need testing as new technologies and new processes become available for us. And that's how we move science forward, by constantly asking the same questions, maybe in different ways or using different tools.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we'll take Vikram. He's on our bandwagon of plants are going to be animals.
We're all going to be closer organisms than we thought we were.
Yes, absolutely. All right. So Vikram, before we let you go, because we haven't done this with any of our other guests, but because we knew you were going to be fun, we decided I wrote a bunch of lightning round questions. So there's 10 questions here we're going to ask.
Okay.
And just as soon as I read them, your answer, just the first thing that comes to the top of your head.
Got it.
All right. Number 1. Have you ever named a plant after a celebrity?
No. I should.
Katie, what?
I know.
Have I? No, but I did name one whenever I was married. I named one after my ex-husband at the time because he hated that plant. And so I named it Carl. And then he picked it up. Like, I was like, hey, can you move it? Because I wanted to like soak it in the shower and stuff. I was like, hey, can you move it? And it was a fiddle leaf. And so he picked it up and right into the fan. And it just like, boom, 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 boom,
oh,
like,
no.
took the whole top. And I had been like taking care of this. It was amazing. And I was like, you chopped off Carl Jr.'s head. Like, and he just took off the whole top of it. So I constantly used to name like stuff like that after my ex-husband because he hated it, because it was so funny. Because I'd be like, did you move Carl today? And he's like, stop it. I'm like, I thought it was hilarious.
It's objectively pretty funny. Yeah.
It is. It really is. All right. Number 2, if plants could talk, what do you think they would say?
Oh gosh, there'd be a lot of screaming.
Right.
I think we would walk through a forest and they would just look at us like, "Why are you this way?" I think plants like peppers would be real confused.
We're poisonous.
Because-
Why do you keep eating us?
What is wrong with you weird monkeys? Like,
Yeah.
What do we have to do to keep you from eating us?
Right. If you could be any plant, which one would you be and why?
I'm going to say a coffee tree because I'm mostly that already.
Fair. Very fair. Have you ever seen a plant with a funny name or nickname, which is like your favorite one that you've come across?
Oh gosh, that is a good question. A funny name or a nickname? I can't think of anything good for this. This should be easy, but there's so many weird ones out there.
So many weird ones.
I have a good one. There's one called the Gimpy Gimpy in Australia, and it's like a stinging nettle tree that
Yes.
feels like being stung by bees nonstop for months.
It sounds
and that's
fun
such-
until something happens.
right.
Yeah.
It does, like, hey, this is a great time. This is like, it's not. It makes me think of like three-legged races. But it is a nightmare, a literal nightmare of a plant.
Yeah, that's the one that people have like committed, like they've unalived themselves.
No,
right?
they have.
That's what.
Yeah, because
Yes.
of the pain from it. Yeah,
Horrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, horrible.
What is the strangest place you've ever seen a plant grow?
Out of gutters. Like they grow out of gutters all the time. And like on top of buildings, out of the side of buildings. They don't care. Anywhere a seed lands, especially like elm trees, because the seeds just blow
true,
everywhere. And they're like,
Yeah.
I'll grow into the side of this building.
This
Why
is
not?
Fine.
This is fine. I don't even care.
Okay, and name just right now. This isn't your question, but what is your favorite plant that you have right now, like in your greenhouse?
Ooh, I have I can't remember it's Midnight Splendor or something. It's an adenium. It's a desert rose.
Okay.
And it's this weird looking like plant with this like bulbous stem, and it puts out the most incredibly beautiful flowers. I can't remember the variety name, but it's really cool.
I mean, anything called Midnight Splendor. Wowzer. That's an awesome name.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
So with that plant in mind, if you could give that plant a voice, what would it sound like? And you need to demonstrate it right now.
Oh my God. Oh, what would it sound like? Definitely it would have a deeper voice, I think, and it would talk real slow, and it would probably be a jazz singer. I don't know how to
that
do
makes
that.
sense.
Okay. I can
Like
see
the
that. I can
sweet,
definitely
sultry
see
tones of your Midnight Splendor.
Yep.
Like a
It's,
Yep, on a
Midnight
cruise ship,
DJ.
but not like, but like not like a real good one, like on a cruise ship somewhere.
He's on the fair circuit.
Yep.
yeah, right. What would be the most embarrassing thing that could happen to a plant?
Like let's go
Like,
back
if you
to
had personify
peppers.
it.
Like, let's go back to peppers. Like, that has to be insulting, right? Like, I think of any plant that has like defense chemicals, peppers, coffee. Like, they're like, we use this as an insecticide, and the monkeys are just running around real fast. I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, right. Yeah. All right, you have 3 more torture questions here. If you could make a plant dance to any song, which one would you choose? Which song would you choose?
It would have to be something from the 80s.
Good start.
What's a good dance song from the 80s? I kind of get like Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy vibes when he's, dancing to 80s music.
Mostly all 80s, yeah.
Yeah, that's what sticks in my head for some reason. Or like disco. I don't know.
That would be.
I feel like that lends itself well to plants with all the like branches and I don't
Flashy bits.
In 15 years, when we find out that music really does help, we're just going to pass Vikram's greenhouse. There's going to be like blaring disco music out of there. Just like, looks like a
Party in the
jungle just
greenhouse.
overtaken. Yeah, right. Okay, number 9. Have you ever had a dream about a talking plant?
I don't think I have.
Do you dream in plants?
I don't. I mostly dream about being late to stuff.
Stress dreams. Yeah.
I have a lot of stress. Or the only ones I remember seem to be stress dreams. I've been in academia a long time.
I dream about not knowing what class I'm going to a lot. Which I haven't even been in school in a long time, but it's still ingrained of like, I don't know my
thing.
schedule. Where am I going next?
Yep.
Or like I had a dream not too long ago of showing up to class and my students being like, "We have a test today." I'm like, no, you don't.
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah. All right, last one. If you were stranded on a desert island with only one plant, which would you choose and why?
I'm gonna. Ooh, this is a good
Wait,
one.
is it desert? Like there's no other living plant on that island?
No, deserted. Like a
Okay.
Deserted island.
Yeah, sorry.
Like if there was just one.
Just one plant you could have.
Anyone that follows me on social media is going to get a kick out of this. I'm going to actually say a banana plant, because you can do so much with them.
You're pretty versatile.
Like the food is nutrient dense, like the fruits are nutrient dense. The leaves can be used for shelter or wrappings or a lot of other things.
Probably clothes.
I think. Yeah, and I think they found that there's enzymes in the peels even that can be used to like treat sunburns and like small wounds and things like that. And I yell about bananas a lot on TikTok, but
yell about bananas.
I do. My life's weird.
Banana t-shirt too.
Yeah.
I yell about bananas.
Yep. That's my life.
Yeah. That's a great one. Well, Vikram, it has been fantastic to have you on. For you listeners, make sure you guys go over and listen to Planthropology. Wherever you listen to your podcast, you said TikTok is Plant Prof?
The Plant Prof, yeah.
Okay, I knew I was missing something there. The Plant Prof. And then keep an eye out for his book coming out in July. I know I'm, again, very, very excited for it. And then, as always, make sure you guys can connect with us on Twitter. Vikram's on Twitter as well, under Planthropology. Is that where you want them to head? Yep, so you can go to Planthropology too, and then support us if you can.
Yeah, thanks so much, Vikram. We appreciate it. Good to meet you.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me. Yeah, you too.